Horikoshi, when he was drawing this chapter of My Hero Academia, was like, what? I'm creating art. I think it would be an absolute understatement to say Star and Stripes' Quirk hasn't reached the realm of godlike at this point. I mean, literally last chapter of My Hero Academia was already telling enough on how ridiculous her power was to begin with. Even with the apparent restrictions that we saw throughout the last chapter, the ability to alter reality to whatever you want it to be is beyond anything we have seen before besides Eri at this point that is able to reset people and rewind their very wounds to a previous point. Star was even able to create a gigantic muscular air version of herself in the sky. In fact, she literally became the very sky above the clouds. Now, I know people are going to be quick with the, is this a JoJo reference? And yes, we can say it's indeed a JoJo reference. Star definitely used Stendo Power to Giga Clap Shigaraki and proceed to grind him down into atoms. And speaking of references, anyone else think that sounds like a Thanos reference? Anyways, also this is a perfect segue to talk about the obvious references Horikoshi Sensei has been putting into the manga these last few chapters. I feel like everyone caught on to the pilots of the stealth bombers that Star has been writing being referenced to Star Wars pilots. It's honestly a no-brainer how much of a fanboy Horikoshi Sensei is of Star Wars, because I mean, he even went as far as to put, let's say, like an entire cover dedicated to Star Wars, so it's always been apparent how much he loves it. Still, he even went further beyond. You could even say he went plus ultra in this chapter by having Star form all of the lasers into one gigantic lightsaber to strike Shigaraki down. Also, the Commander Akbar is clearly the famous Admiral Akbar from Star Wars. The very design straight up looks like him, and I feel like we all know his famous line, "It's a trap!" Speaking of "it's a trap," it was actually in this chapter of My Hero Academia. If you look at every first letter of the Commander's speech bubbles, it'll spell out, "It's a trap." I mean, seriously, look for yourself. It really does. Now, I didn't notice this until I was told on social media, so shout out to those that discovered this first before anyone else. You guys are the true winners and really taking note and looking deep into these dialogue bubbles. I do wonder if the Japanese translation, though, actually had the same reference, or if it was just the English translator taking some liberties on the translation and adding in that reference. I don't really know. So if anyone that can actually, let's say, read Japanese and could look at, the original source of this chapter, can anyone confirm if the Japanese actually had the "It's a Trap" reference, or if it really was just an English reference thrown in with the dialogue? I am extremely curious about that. Anyways, let's get into Star's capabilities and what we know so far. The entire beginning of this chapter is dissecting Star's quirk, New Order. From the information we can gather is that it is indeed what I thought it was from the last chapter review I did of My Hero Academia. It works fundamentally similar to the Death Note, but the rules can be bent to a certain degree, very similar to how, Light Yagami, is able to bend the rules with like a heart attack. He could have people do certain things throughout the day before they actually died. There's obviously things we don't still fully understand about the quirk New Order and its absolute limitations that Shigaraki was talking about, which my reasoning for why Star has a power limit is her sense of reality on herself, which is why she was able to manipulate the sky like she did in this chapter. And to kind of give some clarity to what I'm talking about, when you think about what Star was thinking about in the last chapter, she truly believed that All Might was superior in every way, according to her, in super strength. So because of her ideals towards that and how she feels about All Might, it's probably putting a restriction on herself subconsciously, and because of what we found out about reality and how she's able to manipulate it and know certain things, she knows how strong she is, or she believes in her mind how strong she is, and she doesn't think that she could ever be able to size up to what All Might's strength was. So because of that viewpoint is probably putting shackles / a restriction on her absolute limitations with her quirk. So that could be fundamentally the biggest drawback. So theoretically, if All For One / Shigaraki was able to get their hands on New Order, and if they believe that they're the strongest entity that can surpass everything, most likely the limitations of New Order might not actually apply to said individuals, which is another thing to think about too. We know New Order has, 2 rules, and since Shigaraki technically can kind of be considered 3 different people right now, Tenko, Shigaraki, and also All For One, you could say that maybe if he gets his hands on the quirk, he might actually be able to use, let's say, 6 rules at once, because each individual would only be able to use 2 rules. I could be wrong there, but that's just me throwing things out there, because there was a lot of dialogue that was very reminiscent of Hunter x Hunter, and I doubt I was the only one to feel that while just reading the dissection of the New Order Quirk. But, yeah, I do wonder if Horikoshi will throw that in if somehow All For One does get his hands on New Order, which would already make already broken Quirk even more broken. Now, speaking of reality bending, can we talk about how Star legit could pummel her opponents with the giant air version of herself and he wouldn't even be able to react to it? Shigaraki himself even admits in the chapter he didn't see anything coming. So it literally is a giant invisible, wall, an invisible air just continuously punching you. That's freaking ridiculous when you actually take a moment to think about it. She was even able to grab the lasers with her air version of herself and use it to strike Shigaraki down. Now, I do want to point something out about that, actually. If you notice before she grabs the lasers with the air, she was completely unhurt. There's multiple panels you can look at before she actually gets the lasers with her giant version of herself. She's completely unhurt. But as soon as she grabs and then combines the lasers, she looks incredibly hurt. I feel like Horikoshi-sensei is definitely implying a few things with this panel. One, either she took off her second rule of super strength to be able to even form the lasers into one to grab them, or there's some form of damage feedback from her Quirk New Order. Or, to go even further, maybe because she created a gigantic air version of herself, if the gigantic air version potentially takes damage, it's possible maybe the damage from that giant version of herself actually goes back to her main body, like a damage feedback. That could be another potential weakness to her, who really knows. Now, speaking of the rules, I feel that her manipulating reality like she is right now in this chapter was actually a major secret that was kept by the United States. Because judging by her reaction towards Shigaraki in the chapter, she changed tactics rather quickly and went on full assault mode to bring him down. She declared All For One / Shigaraki a global threat that needs to be neutralized. So she goes all in. She makes a giant version of herself and out of air. She starts, thunderclapping him and everything. So it kind of hints at the fact that maybe this type of power that she's capable of has been a well-guarded secret for, different people to not really know what Star and Stripe is actually capable of. I guess we are about to see, though, if Shigaraki can handle / regenerate through a nuke in the upcoming chapters. I mean, now if he indeed does get hit by it and he survives that blow, honestly, I don't even know how he'll be taken down at that point, besides Izuku somehow talking to Shigaraki to change his mindset, his ideals, and become a better person. So as for right now, it's up in the air who will really win this battle, and I do want to dive a little bit more into Shigaraki. He did mention his dog, or Tenko mentioned his dog, and I feel like that's a really nice call out to show that the innocent child version of Tenko is still inside of Shigaraki and All For One, and that, that personality could potentially come back. But I know majority believe Star will get defeated here in this fight between Shigaraki versus Star, but I truly doubt it. But there's no way Horikoshi-sensei would allow All For One to get his hands on New Order at this point, with just how ridiculously overpowered it actually is from what we saw from just this chapter alone. But that's about it when it comes to this chapter of My Hero Academia. It was truly glorious, and I love the little details thrown into it, the little references to Star Wars. I can't wait for the next chapter to see what happens in this fight, but I guess I'll end it there. Thank you for watching, and if you had fun, please leave a like and subscribe if you want more of my content in the future. And love you all, and be safe. Chibi out.